All right, so the intellectual powerhouse, Jordan Peterson, went on Joe Rogan's podcast the other day to basically fill 4 hours with absolutely vapid nonsense. And one of the things that he said towards the beginning of this interview was about climate change. And I think that this clip that I'm about to show for you guys pretty much puts who Jordan Peterson is in full perspective. And that is to say, the type of guy who thinks that he's always the smartest in the room while saying things that sound complex and, multi-layered, that are actually just like the most mind-numbingly stupid things that you've ever heard. Okay, so let's just go ahead and with a little bit of context here, basically the initial question that Jordan was asking Joe is, what do you do to prepare for guests that are coming on your show? And Joe starts by talking about how he reads about literature to prepare for this. Okay, so that's the context of this initial part of this discussion. Let's just go ahead and jump into this absolute shit show.
I have 2 books that I'm reading right now that are future people that are coming in February. So they're
a lot ahead.
Yeah, they'll be, it's like one of them is a climate change book, and it's intense. And so it's requiring a lot of thinking, and then I have to look at the criticisms of this guy and criticisms of the work, and who believes that in 10 years Miami's going to be underwater, who believes that this is probably hyperbole and that it's a gross exaggeration, and the reality is, the world sort of always goes through these cycles of change, but human beings are definitely having an effect on it.
Okay, so can we just take a quick pause here? Name one scientist, please, or literally anybody who knows anything about climate change that is saying that Miami is going to be underwater within 10 years. I mean, I've seen some estimates that show the Florida coastline receding over the next 100 years or so, but I don't think literally anybody, that would be hyperbolic, like he just said, if somebody was actually making that claim, but he's just kind of creating a straw man there. I've never heard anybody say something that wild, because that would be, completely ridiculous, but he's setting up this false dichotomy here between, Miami is underwater in 10 years or climate change is fake, as if there's no reasonable middle ground between those two things, I guess.
But a small effect compared to cows and other things. It's hard to sort out. The climate change one is a weird one. So that's because.
Okay, so Jordan's about to give his answer right here, which is gonna completely fuck your brain for a minute, but what Joe just said about cows, okay, think about that too for just 1 second, all right? He's talking about cow farts, right? He's talking about the methane that is emitted from cow farts, but even that, how are you going to say that that's the fault of cows? It's not the fault of cows. It's not like they're just running around in the wild farting it up and polluting the planet. The pollution that's coming from cows, that too is an outgrowth of our mode of production for our food that we produce for the entire world, and how we are conducting our agricultural industrial farming, okay? So that too would also be humans to blame, not random cows, I guess. But again, don't really know what his point there was. But now we get to Jordan Peterson with one of the best lines that I've ever heard in my entire life on climate change.
There's no such thing as climate, right? Climate and everything are the same word. And that's what bothers me about the climate change types. It's this is something that bothers me about it technically. It's climate is about everything. So, okay. But your models aren't based on everything. Your models are based on a set number of variables.
Yeah.
So that means you've reduced the variables, which are everything, to that set. Well, how did you decide which set of variables to include in the equation if it's about everything? And that's not just a criticism. That's if it's about everything, your models aren't right. Because you're...
Okay, so basically what he's saying right here is, unless you can, in any scientific experiment or analysis, unless you can account for literally every single variable, okay, in existence, then there's no validity to any predictions that those climate models or any models of any sort could ever make, okay? He's saying if you don't know everything, you know nothing, all right? That's literally what he's saying right there. So again, I'm not really sure how you could possibly be of this mindset specifically for climate change and not transition it to other things, because you could say the same thing about, literally anything. You could look at a fucking football game and say, this team has 20 all-stars on it and this other team is one of the worst teams we've ever seen in history, but I guess since we don't know, the specific lengths of every blade of grass on the field, there's no way to possibly predict who's likely to win the game. I mean, that's what he's saying right here. He's saying, unless you know everything, you know absolutely nothing. And this is even more stupid when you're talking about climate models, okay? What the fuck are you even talking about? Climate is everything. I mean, we've graduated to like completely new levels of this brain rot surrounding climate change and this debate on climate change as if it's still a debate. I mean, we went from people saying, climate change isn't real to climate change is it's a made up hoax to, by the Chinese, as Trump was saying, to, okay, fine, climate change is maybe a little bit real, but humans aren't really the primary cause, to, okay, humans are causing climate change, but maybe that's not such a bad thing. And now we've ended up at the point with Jordan Peterson's massive brain, okay, where now we're just saying climate itself is not real, okay? Not climate change is not real, but climate, the word climate, can't possibly have a definition. Okay, that's literally what the fuck is he even saying? This is what I'm talking about, okay? This is who Jordan Peterson is. A guy who comes to the table and on an issue that is pretty simple, like climate change, okay? I'm not a climate scientist, but I can tell you some very basic things, okay? We understand the nature of greenhouse gases and how they trap heat that is coming from the sun, okay? Big, hot sun, right? Send a bunch of hot energy into the earth. We have gases like greenhouse gases, right, that are produced largely by human activity. Okay, there's been a significant escalation of that recently in the industrialized world. Okay, we produce these greenhouse gases and then they trap that heat from going back out into space, and that warms the planet over time. Then we can start to talk about other variables like temperature increases or the increased frequency of large storms or the decreased humidity out in places like California that leads to an increased chance of wildfires or the more spreading of diseases as temperatures increase in more northern and southern areas of the planet. I mean, we can talk about a million different fucking variables that are definitely affected by climate change, but you're not going to be able to have any of those conversations if you just stop the conversation at, well, climate just means everything. What do you mean it means everything? No, it doesn't. It means like a specific set of variables that are pertinent to, the planet and how the planetary cycles work. Okay, you don't even have to be a scientist to understand the very fundamentals of that. But apparently this, intellectual titan, Jordan Peterson, is not even able to understand that, or not even willing to define climate as a word that actually exists, okay? Climate is everything, everything is everything, I guess, and nobody can actually know anything concrete about the world unless you can account for literally every single variable in existence. So, one of the most brain-rotted, stupid clips that I've seen in a while, but, this is the state of the Joe Rogan podcast and also the state of this, hailed intellectual titan, Jordan Peterson, who's often held up by conservatives and the right as some sort of, big-brained intellectual. I mean, this is what you're getting from this guy.